Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today we are starting off part 1 of a multi-part series on how to play Star Trek Into the Unknown, the new miniatures game by WizKids. And I wanted to start off with a very basic course called Movement, where we're going to talk about how you move your ships. That is a core concept in the game, and there are a couple of different ways that you can do movement. We're going to talk about those in today's video. Plus, there is still plenty of opportunities left to win various Life Day giveaways. All that we're doing 12 days of Life Day throughout December, so make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment on this or one of my videos to win any of these fabulous giveaways that will be announced at the end of videos throughout the month of December, or any of the other giveaways we do throughout 2025. With all that being said, let's jump into how we do movement in Star Trek Into the Unknown. Now, if a ship wants to do a move, there are two different types of moves that they can do typically in the game. There's the warp move and the impulse move, and they're done from different stations. We're going to talk about the impulse move first, which is done from the helm section of the bridge. To do an impulse move, you have to have an officer there that is not committed, or an empty spot that you can then move an officer to and then commit them to do that priority action if you're doing it during the priority phase. Otherwise, you can always do any of these actions during the standby phase as a standby action. But in order to do a priority action, in this case, we will have to consult the action icons that appear right next to the impulse command. In this case, a lot of these skills want security skills, social skill, or technical skill. And in this case, it wants one technical skill and then one energy. Now, as long as your officer does have at least one technical skill, which the daring first officer here does have, so we'll commit him, he can meet that requirement, and then we will then just have to pay one power from our impulse. Now, different ships and different dashboards will have different requirements. So some will require multiple icons in order to do an impulse, and some will require less. For example, the warp also has the social requirement as well. So impulse is going to be engaged, and that's what we do to start the action. Notice that the helm station has a red line that goes up to the top where this impulse section is. It's very easy to get confused and to think that this is the section that has impulse, but or that belongs to helm, but this is for your instruments section. So just remember that helm officers will reference this block when looking at actions that can be taken from the helm, and in this case, we're going to go with impulse first. So now that we've done an impulse action, we're going to consult our movement, which is this red value right here. And at our current green alert 1 status, we have 8 inches of impulse movement that we can do and a turn value of 3. If we were at different statuses, if we were at green alert 2, we would have slightly less power available to impulse. And as we increase in alert status, we draw more power away from engines and more power towards other systems. So, and we'll reset that back to green alert. So in this case, we'll say we have 8 movement available. So now to actually perform that maneuver, we're going to get our turning tool here, as well as a inches range tool here. And we will start by aligning this to the center, like so, such that the middle line aligns with the middle line of the ship's base. And what we can do is we'll just go ahead and slide this maneuver tool underneath the turning tool, and then there we go. We then can slide this up 8 inches up to the 8 right there if we were wanting to do our max turn, and then move there. Now we can also turn, and we can either turn up to our max turn value, which in this case was 3. We can do that before or after the move. So in case I wanted to go straight and then orient my ship, I could then turn my ship 1, 2, and I'm going to pull this out first, and 3, if I wanted to do a max turn that way. But in the case that I wanted to turn first and then move, which I think is a little bit more common, I would go ahead and lock this in. Now I don't have to go up to my maximum impulse value. I could do a partial. Maybe I didn't need a full 8 inches. Maybe I only needed to go 6. But what I wanted to do first is I wanted to turn 1 maybe I wanted to do 1.5. Maybe I didn't need the full 3. You don't have to do your maximum turn. And then I'll go up to maybe about the 6-inch mark where I wanted to go, and then I'll lock in straight at that point. So again, you can turn before or after, but not both. It is a helpful tip sometimes to possibly consider that something I like to do is maybe just put this on top of the tool. It's slightly, you have a little bit of elevation there, but it just makes it a little bit easier to get it all lined in and then get your turning done. Like, oh, I want to go this way, and then put this on top, and then pull my ship out, move it forward to there, and line it up like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but this is a very narrow, so sometimes, again, when there's tokens in the way, you run the risk of knocking some of your tokens out of the way if you're if you're being loosey-goosey with it. So sometimes I like to put it on top instead. So that's a basic forward impulse, but there are other types of impulse maneuvers you can do. So one of the advanced impulse maneuvers we can do is a lateral impulse, which is actually sort of a strafing maneuver. And it's something that you can do with the impulse command, although you won't get your full impulse value. So in the case that we are going to do a lateral impulse, this will allow us to sort of move like this or do something kind of left and right, because the ships have, they have thrusters all over the place. So to do a lateral impulse, you can stick this in the front instead. And if you wanted to turn, if I wanted to go left, I could turn this to the right, and I only get half of my turn value rounded up and half of my speed rounded up. So if I was 8 for my speed, I can now only go 4 inches, and if I only had 2 clicks, I could only take 1 click, so on and so forth. But in this case, I would do that, and then I could move over to up to 4 inches, and then lock my ship in right there, and that would be a lateral impulse. Similar to a lateral impulse, I can also do a reverse. And to do a reverse, it is very similar to a lateral, although we will use the sides. And we also get some of the same restrictions. We get half of our turn value rounded up and half of our impulse engine power rounded up. So again, if you're in the middle of combat and you only have 4 engine power, you might only get 2 inches to go back. So we'll say that that's the case. Maybe we only have 1 turn power. We can get half of that rounded up, so we could still turn 1 in reverse. And we might do something like this. Maybe we're only going 2 inches back. I'll pull that out. 1, 2, and we do a reverse like that. That is an advanced impulse. Another type of advanced impulse maneuver we might want to do is the come about maneuver, which doesn't actually use any of these fancy tools at all. It allows us to just rotate our ship to any facing, and it's nice if we are kind of backed into a corner and we don't really have anywhere to go, and we want to kind of reorient ourselves for the next turn, or maybe we have some forward-facing guns that we want to point towards an enemy, or we want to get an object in sensors range. It's useful for a lot of those cases. It's a very common advanced impulse maneuver to be able to do, and that was all there is to it, is you just rotate your ship around the center and have any facing you would like. Now, if you are in deep space and approaching the edge of a system boundary, an impulse maneuver will not be enough to have you enter that system. You will stop at the border, and if you wish to go forward, you would still continue to go forward, but your ship wouldn't move. You would just stay right where you were, and you'd just be considered to still be in deep space. So this is kind of like the border for where an impulse maneuver can take you. And likewise, if you are inside of a system and are trying to leave that system, an impulse cannot take you beyond the border of that system. So in order to do that, we need to do a warp maneuver. So now we access the warp from the captain's chair, and of course we have Captain Jean-Luc Picard currently at the captain's chair. Now, warp does have 2 skills and also a power requirement. Now, Captain Picard does certainly meet those skills. He's got them in spades. So we will only have to pay the 1 power to engage a warp maneuver. And of course, we will exhaust Jean-Luc Picard, and we'll pay our 1 auxiliary power to do that. Now we can engage a warp maneuver. There's a couple of things we want to reference before we engage warp. One of those things is what our maximum warp value is. In this case, our maximum warp is warp 9, which would allow us to travel in a straight line up to double this maximum value in inches. So for you math wizards out there, that's going to be 18 inches we can potentially go. However, we are restricted by whatever our current max engine power is. In this case, it is 8, which is less than 9. So if we wanted to do a full warp 9, we'd have to pay power equal to the distance. Now we can go any number lower than this. So if we're currently at engine power 8, we could go warp 8 without having to pay additional power. Or if we were maybe at yellow alert, we would only have 5 engine power, so we could go warp 5. But if we wanted to go warp 9, it would cost us 4 extra reserve energy, and that can get pretty taxing to do that. So we want to be very sparing with our warps, and generally you want to try to get down to green alert before you start doing long distance warps. It's also noteworthy that you can warp within a system or outside of a system. You don't have to cross a system boundary when you do it, but it is the only way that you can. Suppose my ship is inside a system and I'm trying to warp into deep space, or maybe there's even another system over here that I want to jump into. If I have enough warp power, it is possible to jump from one system directly into another if you have the range. So in this case, let's say I was going to do a warp 8 and I wanted to have a little bit more inches than I have available on this particular ruler, which is only 12 inches. Well, there are 2 of these in the box, and of course a 6-inch ruler, so we can put these together to make up the difference. But since we aren't turning, the rule of thumb that you will often hear people say in this game is faster than light, no left or right. It was actually a quote from Tom Paris in Voyager. And what that means is that we're not going to be turning if we do a warp maneuver. It's a straight maneuver only. And so what we can do is I like to align it with the center here, the center line. And then if I'm going to go 18 inches, I can then put this on the edge of that, and then we can go as far along that as we would like. And of course, we don't have to go the full distance, because we may want to just stop right here. Now, why would you want to stop early? Well, let's talk about something else that happens with warp. Many missions that you will play with will have anomalies out on the board, and these will be different various numbered tokens that will correspond to some type of legend on the card that say what each number will be. These are randomized before the game, and they will get put down. And once it is revealed, this may be something that is really bad for you at warp, like maybe some kind of field or anomaly that does damage to ships that pass over it with warp. Now, these don't necessarily trigger if you pass over them with an impulse maneuver, but if you pass over one of these at warp, it instantly is revealed. And if it was something that impacted a ship that flew over it at warp, it can be very damaging to your ship. So oftentimes when you are at warp, you want to avoid having your ship actually fly directly over these. You want to maybe stop soon and then maybe do a come about maneuver and try to plot an angle or a vector that's going to get you another warp maneuver at the end and get you through those. So suppose I have a ship that needs to move a whole lot, and we've already done an impulse maneuver, and we've already done a warp maneuver, and we want to move a third time in a round. Well, we can't do that during the priority phase, but we can always wait until the standby phase to try and do one of those actions. Again, the standby phase is that second part of each round that every ship is going to have one extra action that they can take, although they're not always as good as a priority action. We don't have an officer to commit to it, so if we wanted to do another warp maneuver, we would have to account for all of those symbols by paying a reserve energy for each. So instead of just 1 reserve energy, we'd have to pay 3 reserve energy to do another warp. In the case of impulse, since there's only 1 symbol there, we would have to pay our regular energy plus 1. So it only costs us 2 to do another impulse maneuver. So that is, we'd still be bound by our current speed from whatever our engine setting is. And so, but that is a quick way to drain a lot of your power very, very quickly. And if you are at green alert, you're probably not getting that much reserve power back each turn. So be very careful about moving too much too fast. That's a great way to run your ship out of power. Lastly, you cannot have your ship end a maneuver where they're off of the mat or overlapping another ship. But outside of that, that is just about everything you need to know about how to move your ships in Star Trek Into the Unknown. Let me know if you have any questions. If there's anything I missed, let me know down in the comments section below. And stay tuned for more videos on how to play Star Trek into the unknown. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely out of this world and help make this whole channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. The spice must flow. And always wash your socks.